Welcome to Life School, Series 2, Bumps and Babies. As I record this today, I am currently 23 weeks and 4 days pregnant with my first baby, which I'm so excited to share I now know is a little girl. I'm still in the process of recording this series, and my plan was to start releasing episodes once I'd finished recording with all my wonderful guests. However, in light of the current global situation with coronavirus, recording for now is on hold. So I've decided to share with you the episodes I've recorded so far over the past couple of months. I know many of us are currently self-isolating at home with lots of time on our hands, so what better time to listen to your favourite podcasts or perhaps discover some new ones. As a first-time mum, pregnancy, birth and babies is a whole new world for me, and I personally want to educate myself as much as I can before my little one arrives. From positive birth stories, information on hypnobirthing, water births, C-sections, baby massage and more, I hope throughout this series I can shed some light on just some of the areas you may be worried about, or even just intrigued about. Thank you to all the incredible birth workers and women who have made this series possible so far, and thank you so much for listening. My guest for this episode is Shereen Zarroug, the founder of Belly Baby Mum, a licensed doula, pregnancy and parent support group here in Dubai. Shereen is a doula and hypnobirthing mentor in the region, and during our conversation, she not only talks about her journey to becoming a birth worker, but she also candidly shares with us her 3 personal pregnancy and birth experiences. So, without further ado, here's episode 3 with the lovely Shereen. Happy listening! Shereen, welcome to Life School.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with me today, and I'm really excited about our chat today because you've given me a little insight into your birthing experience, your personal birthing experiences, but also your whole world of hypnobirthing, being a doula, breastfeeding. So I'm really excited, but I want to start by talking about your personal pregnancy and birth experiences, because I know you have 3 little ones. Mm-hmm. And you have 3 very different experiences. So can you start by telling us about those?
Sure.
We'll start with the first one.
Okay, great. How long do you have? Okay, so I think it was about 12 years ago when I got pregnant with my first child. And, you know, at that time, unfortunately, it wasn't a big deal to kind of, you know, go into childbirth education classes or have a doula or any, you know, that kind of support. I wasn't aware of, you know, if any of these things existed actually. So I went into it, you know, I'm pregnant, you have your baby, normally, naturally, that's how my family, you know, had it. There was actually no one that I knew that had cesareans or any kind of complicated births. So it was a pretty chilled out pregnancy. Yeah, everything was great actually until I would say about 38 and a half weeks, where I remember I was at my mom's, so she was my neighbor, she lived in Dubai at the time, and I'm sitting there and I felt a little trickle. And I was like, whoa, what's this? Like, I had no idea what to expect actually at the time. And my mom was like, I think that might be your water. And I was like, oh, well, the only thing I knew about waters was that it just kind of flooded everything, right? Like it came out as this big gush.
This is what you see on the movies.
Exactly, right? So that's what I expected. And so that's why I was a bit like surprised, concerned. And she was like, hey, you know, it's fine. You know, are you feeling anything? And I was like, no, no, I'm not feeling any contractions. So she's like, okay, let's just chill for a few hours. So I was actually really happy. She did say that. But then I was getting very anxious and I thought, well, something's wrong. You know, why am I not feeling anything? And I remember this was like 3 a.m, you know, and I couldn't sleep. You know, obviously I was waking up every hour. In the end, you know, I think it was 3 or 4 hours that passed and I thought, let's just go to hospital. My mom was like, why don't you call the hospital and see what they say? So I remember calling them and telling them what had happened. And they're like, well, yeah, just come in. Let's just see what's going on. So I end up going to hospital, my husband and I. It was early hours, about 6 or 7 in the morning. And again, still no contractions. I wasn't feeling anything. So once I get into hospital, they check me and they're like, well, you're at 1 centimeter dilation. And yeah, why don't you just try walking around the room or the hospital for about an hour and come back and let's see what happens. So I was like, great, okay. So we did that, walking around. Excuse me. And, once I came back to the room, again, not feeling anything, they decided to check me. I think it was about 2 hours later. And still, I was 1 centimeter. So they're like, okay, so it looks like things aren't progressing. We might need to do something to help you progress. So we're going to give you this medication, and it will help progress your labor, like help get the contraction started. So yeah, great, let's do that. So they hooked me up to the IV. I had no idea what it was at the time. Today, I understand that was Pitocin or Syntocinon, where it's called here. And obviously that's a drug to, get those contractions going.
Is this being induced?
This is being induced.
Is that what that is?
That is being induced, exactly. So funny enough, at the time, I haven't heard that word before. Nobody mentioned it. They just said it was medication to get things going.
And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Obviously something's wrong. So yeah, thank you for fixing it, right? So that happened. I had no idea what to expect. Right. So nobody informed me that it was going to be painful, excruciatingly painful. And that's what happens in a lot of cases with inductions, right? Especially when you have no idea what to expect. So suddenly from 0 to 100, I was screaming in agony. I was like, this is not normal. I mean, I don't know. Is this normal? What's going on? Why am I in so much pain? They checked me again. I think it was 3 hours later. I was at a 2 centimeter. And by then I was like, okay, I can't take any more of this. Give me something. I need something. So they were very quick to come. I remember the nurse coming to me and said, oh, don't worry, this is normal. I'll definitely give you something for pain. So I'll give you something and it will completely take your pain away. I was like, oh my God, such a thing exists. Yes, please. Right, so the next thing I know, this gentleman comes in and, is on my back, behind my back, and they insert this needle, and I still had no idea what was going on. And of course, then I was told, oh, we're giving you an epidural, because you're experiencing a lot of pain, it's gonna just completely make you relaxed, and hopefully, let's see what happens. So I got the epidural, and it was godsend, right? At that moment, I was like, whew, okay, this is great. Wow, yes, I can labor now. So obviously, as you know, with an epidural, you can't really move. You can't really do much except be on the bed and on your back. And that's what happened. So I lay there for the next 3 hours, and I got checked again to see if there was any progress, and I was still at a 2 centimeter. So then I remember the doctor coming in and saying, well, it's been already a few hours, probably around 6 or 7 hours by now. You're still at a 2 centimeter. There seems to be no progress, and it looks like we just have to do a cesarean now. So that was a thought that, I had never thought about actually throughout the whole process. I just thought this is how labor goes. Yes, sometimes, things don't pick up and they might need to help you with that, which they did. But then I just never had the idea that it would end up in a cesarean. All I knew, again, it was this major surgery. The little that I did know about it, that was, the recovery wasn't great. Like it would take time for women to recover. And obviously, who wants to have a major surgery, right? So I, again, wasn't really informed of what it takes to have a C-section, what it meant, how it goes, benefits, any risks, any of that information. But, I consented to it. They did inform me that that's it. We're going to go now. We can't give you any more time. Baby as well, I was informed that baby wasn't doing too great on the monitors. So we really needed to go and get that baby out. Next thing I know, yes, I was wheeled into surgery and baby was born. At a healthy around 3.6 kg baby girl.
Were you scared when they said, okay, we're going to go into theatre now? Or was it just all happening so quickly that you didn't even have real time to process it?
Honestly, yes, that's how it felt. I wouldn't consider it as... I think I was more in shock more than anything, that I didn't get to experience or think about how I felt at the time. It was just, I honestly thought that, this is what needs to be done. And that's it. I didn't know what to expect. All I wanted was my husband by my side. And I thought, let me just leave this to them. They know what to do. And I'm sure I'll be fine and baby will be fine. So, it wasn't, honestly, I mean, I blocked a lot of it out, but I don't, like I said, I don't recall it being like a traumatic experience. But obviously, when I look back at it today, I knew that I could have done so many things so differently, right? And so, so that was pretty much my first experience with my daughter. Yeah, 12 years ago.
And how was the recovery?
Not great. Yes, it did take me quite some time to recover. I think, when I think about it now, I think a lot of it was actually emotional, that I think and I didn't know it. I think a lot of it was in my subconscious. I was subconsciously wondering if this was the right thing to do and if I really needed to go down that route. But in terms of physical recovery, it was hard because I remember the one thing I wanted to do was to breastfeed my daughter. And that was the most, I think, painful part for me, where, I was staying with my moms at the time. So in my culture, you stay with your mom for the first 40 days. She was my neighbor anyway, so I moved in there and, she would sleep in my room for most days and help me. Obviously, that the idea was to help, when the baby wakes up. And my baby, to my luck, was not the easiest baby, right? She was waking up, she was colicky, she was waking up every hour throughout the whole day. And at the same time, like I said, just trying to breastfeed her and trying to get up out of bed was, something that I would never forget. Honestly, it was so painful, just trying to get up, straight up from bed and just kind of turn over, just lift the baby from its crib to breastfeed. I would be in tears every night trying to do that.
Well, I mean, it's major abdominal surgery.
Yes. I mean, the painkillers weren't helping. And like I said, I think a lot of it was emotional because I was just crying, the whole time. I think everything was slowly coming back to me. And then, with the breastfeeding, of course, thankfully breastfeeding was going great. I had a great supply, everything was fine. But again, being a new mom and, with her crying all the time and then with the surgery, I think when you put it all together, it was just too much to handle at the time.
It's overwhelming.
Oh, yes.
And then so baby number 2, did you think, okay, I'm going to take what I've learned from baby number 1 and maybe things will be a little bit different. Maybe I'll have a different kind of birth. How was the second pregnancy and birth experience?
Okay, so fast forward around 3 years after the birth of my first, I found out I'm pregnant. And yay, I was, excited, of course. My husband always wanted a boy, but we had a girl. So this time he was like, it better be a boy. So it was. And, we were super excited. Pregnancy was going great. I felt, wonderful. But obviously that thought was in my mind thinking, okay, so now does this mean I'm going to go for another cesarean? Because honestly, that's all I heard, and that's what I knew. Again, from the people around me, once a cesarean, always a cesarean.
Yeah.
And that just didn't sit well with me. And I thought, you know what, let me try to research this a little bit. I'm very research oriented with anything. So I thought I definitely want to see if this is actually possible, right, for me to have this vaginal birth that everybody talks about. That's so amazing. And so I started doing my research and I came across the term VBAC. So VBAC, for those who don't know, stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. And I thought, oh, wow, it's a thing. And I started going into all these forums. There were a lot of them were international forums of women sharing their stories, their successful VBAC stories. And I just started reading up into it. And I realized that, wow, it was a possibility. People were doing it outside of the UAE. And I remember joining a lot of the local Facebook groups and trying to find out like if anybody in Dubai actually had a VBAC, and I found a couple of people, so I'm like stalking everybody really trying to find out like who's your doctor, how did you do it, right? And so with the information that I had, I knew it was a possibility. I knew now I had to find a doctor who would support me with this choice. And I asked around, I got a few recommendations, and I remember asking a very close family member of mine. He was a doctor, And he was just like, oh, you definitely need to see this doctor who works in my hospital. She's amazing. She's great. You know, everybody comes to see her. You must go see her. So I was like, great. You know, getting a recommendation from a doctor who's a very, you know, close family friend. Sure, great. You know, why not? So I go see this doctor and I'm like, look, I'm trying to have a VBAC. You know, what do you think? And she's like, I mean, yeah, why not? You know, it is possible for some people, but let me tell you, you know, there is a big possibility that it might just not happen. So just don't get your hopes up too high. And I thought, you know, I'll take that. It's good enough for me, right? So I decided to stick with this doctor. And, you know, pregnancy went fine. I had no issues with the pregnancy itself, thankfully. And so fast forward, I'm now about 38 weeks pregnant. I go for my appointment to see my doctor. And so she gives me an examination, an internal examination. And she's like, oh, so you're not even dilated at all. So you're like really close. Your cervix is closed. Baby's way too high. I don't see any changes in your cervix. So I'm not sure if this is a good sign for you to even try for a VBAC. So I'm sitting there and I don't remember reading a lot about that, you know, but, you know, the chances of having a VBAC. And I just thought, you know, great, it's either a C-section or you just try for a natural. And so she's like, okay, so here's what I recommend. I recommend you come in next week and we do a cesarean. And I remember sitting there just crying my eyes out. Again, I did not expect that it was going to lead up to a cesarean, another cesarean, because I thought, you know, she was supportive. I thought I had good chances. I knew it was possible for a lot of women. So why wasn't it happening for me? And again, I would never forget this moment where I'm sitting there really crying, really desperate for this VBAC. And she flips her computer screen towards me and, you know, opens up her calendar and says, what do you think of this date? So she points to this one particular date on her calendar. That date was 4 days after that day. So it was literally just 4 days after the day I'm sitting with her, and tells me, this date looks good. It works for me. Why don't we schedule that cesarean that day? And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever works for you. All right. So I remember like just crying that whole day to my husband, thinking, what is wrong with me and my body? Like, why can't I achieve this VBAC, you know? So, I missed the most important part. So one of the main reasons she actually also recommended the C-section was she said that I had a humongous baby. So she said, not only are your chances very low for having a VBAC, but you're carrying a very, very big baby. It's probably around 4 plus, like almost a 4.5 kg, that in her words, she said, will rip you apart if he comes out of you the normal way. And that's actually what really made me cry, right? Because I'm thinking, who wants that? Right? I don't know any woman who wants to be ripped apart by her baby, right? And I think that's kind of what made me really kind of jump on that C-section, because obviously I wanted to, you know, be healthy and have a healthy baby and not go through that excruciating pain the way she described it. So I subscribed for that C-section. We scheduled it in. So when the date that she scheduled would have put me at not even at 30, it was a 38 and a half. So 38 and a half weeks pregnancy. We wait those few days. So in those few days, I'm trying to do everything to get this baby to move down. I'm sitting on a birth ball, or we call it a birth ball, but you know, the fitness ball, yoga ball. I'm sitting there just jumping on it all day, every day, trying to do what I can to get this movie to down and hopefully, you know, getting the baby down and hopefully trying to get myself into labor. And it didn't happen. Nothing happened. Nothing budged. So end up going for my scheduled cesarean. And so this was a different experience, obviously, because this would be considered scheduled cesarean versus the first, which was an emergency cesarean. So this time they prepped me up. Obviously, I need my husband with me, just, to calm things. But this time I realized, well, I'm not that scared of the experience because I've been through it before.
You kind of know what to expect, and
exactly,
you're in control a little bit more of the situation.
Right. So it was still an okay experience. I go there. It wasn't, as calm as I had imagined it to be, because I remember during pregnancy, I did manage to watch some very beautiful births. And, I remember seeing all these dimmed lighting and like really calm environments. And so that was a bit, shocking, I would say, for me to just experience those bright lights in the room and just so many people in the room chit-chatting, and there was just so much noise that I just really wished, it was a different experience just for that. And so that got me a little bit anxious. But then, like I said, having somebody who's supportive of you by your side, so having my husband with me was really, really great. I remember him just, cracking jokes and, trying to get me, in a good mood.
Yeah, to relax.
And relaxed, exactly. So that definitely helped. And it didn't take long, as they do, probably a total of half an hour or so. Baby was born at a healthy 3.6 kg. Happy and healthy, and then everything was fine. The recovery was a little bit better this time around, and again, I think it's just my body knowing what to expect, because obviously I've been through it before. Breastfeeding was going great, but then just a few weeks after that, it started to all come back to me. The questions: did I really have to have that C-section? And obviously, just knowing that he weighed at 3.6 kg.
Yeah, so why did the doctor think he was enormous when he was average healthy weight for a baby?
So that's an excellent question. There's two parts to it. So first of all, I think the problem is a lot of doctors, would see the size on ultrasound, and I think what some of them fail to convey to the pregnant women is that they're not super accurate. Ultrasounds aren't always super accurate, and so sometimes the ultrasounds might show you a number which is not very accurate. They're plus minus at least 400 grams in a lot of cases. So I was never informed of that, obviously. I honestly haven't even looked at the ultrasound. I had no idea. I did not read those numbers. I just took what she just told me. But what was interesting as well was, I remember a few days later, it was almost a week after the birth, I had to contact the hospital to get in touch with my doctor for something. And I was told by the nurse that, oh no, she traveled just a few days ago. She's on vacation now, so she's not here. And that's when I was like, oh wait, I started to put two and two together. And I thought, did she just schedule me in for that surgery because she needed to go on holiday? And that's when I was like, no, this couldn't have happened. So I was really annoyed, honestly. I was just like, oh my gosh. So, and especially after knowing my baby wasn't actually that big, it kind of made sense that could have been the reason why she scheduled me in. And and
at no point did she ever say, look, we can wait, like you can go full term to 40 weeks and then we can wait and see where you're at then? Because 40 weeks is the full term, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think they let you go 10 days over that, don't they?
Right. So a full term healthy pregnancy is anywhere from 37 to 42 weeks.
42, yeah.
Yes. And again, though this is different from doctor to doctor of how much they would, be supportive of you to go past your 40 weeks. But as we know, the 40 weeks is your due date, right?
But that was never said to you.
That was never, I knew of the 40-week thing, I knew that was the due date, which I also kind of knew that you can go past it a little bit or, give birth anytime before it. But it was never mentioned. It was never mentioned. I just, I took in what she told me, that this baby was huge. You're trying for a VBAC, so we shouldn't even, wait any longer, not even, more than a few days past past today, the day that I was sitting with her, and yeah, it was never an option.
And I think also with a doctor, you just immediately trust them. Like, why would they not be giving you the correct information that's best for you and your baby?
Exactly.
Like, you take it as gospel, don't you?
And that's the thing, you know. And I think today, obviously, as a birth worker, I see this so often, and it's really, really saddens me where, unfortunately, you know, there are doctors that, you know, they're just not as supportive as they should be, because, you know, a lot of them have their own agenda. And obviously, I wouldn't say this about all doctors. We have some brilliant doctors in Dubai who are super, super supportive. But unfortunately, you know, we couldn't say that for all doctors. I've had that experience, and it still happens today to a lot of women, whether it's a scheduled C-section or an induction, just all for the wrong reasons, you know. And
so before we go into your career in, what do we call it? Not doula-ship or...
Doulaying, as in the verb.
Is that what we call it?
Doulaying?
Doulaying?
Yeah.
What happened with your third baby? So you've had these two experiences, and by the second you're like, hang on a minute.
Right.
I think there's something is not quite right here. So what happened with your third baby?
Okay, so again, fast forward, I think it was around 3 years after the birth of my second.
So there's 3 years in between.
There's about 3.5 to 4 years gap between each of them. So yes, with my third, when I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't the happiest person. I mean, I was crying. I've cried a lot with my pregnancies.
Me too.
I remember crying, like I was in shock when I did that pregnancy test, and that came up positive. And I remember standing there in front of my husband saying, oh no, this is not happening. I don't want this baby. Like I honestly thought I'm not gonna go through this experience again.
So you were quite happy with just two?
I was.
So you guys weren't trying for a third?
We weren't, because we had a boy and we had a girl. And, you know, that's great. We had one of each, and we just weren't thinking of a third. Funny story, when I did go to my gynecologist at the time, and I said, I don't know how it happened. She's like, do you really want me to tell you how it happened? So, I mean, honestly, it was very unexpected. Just sort of happens, you know, that 1%, right? And so I was not very happy, because obviously I started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to go through that, you know, that same experience. It's most likely going to end up in a cesarean. And knowing how hard-headed I was, I knew that I was probably going to try to achieve a vaginal birth again. And I just did not want to go through all of that again. But obviously we decided to, you know, go with it, keep the baby. And I started to get a little bit excited, obviously just being pregnant and having a third child. You know, that was exciting. And then I started really researching now about VBAC2s. So VBAC2, that's a vaginal birth after two cesareans, right? And I thought, okay, you know, the whole VBAC thing was starting to happen in Dubai. Like I knew of a lot of women who were having VBACs, but at the time I'd never heard of a woman having a vaginal birth after two cesareans. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun, right? Trying to find a doctor in a hospital that was going to support me with this. At the time, I was working full-time as well. So I was working in marketing and advertising. That's my field. And I remember spending a lot of the hours on my day just kind of researching about VBAC2s. And what I remember is I came across, in my Google search, I came across this list of 10 things to do to, you know, increase your chances to have a VBAC. And the top two things that was mentioned on that list was hire a doula and enroll yourself in a hypnobirthing program. And I remember saying, what?
What is a doula and what is hypnobirthing?
And what is this hippie thing called hypnobirthing? What is going on? Is this how births happen these days? Like, I was so like, this is interesting, you know, really, what is a doula? What is that? Is that a profession, you know? So that took me by surprise. And I remember researching doulas in Dubai, and to my surprise, there were quite a few. And I thought, okay, so obviously what said that, that having a doula by your side increases your chances of having a VBAC because you have, or any kind of a birth really, because, that emotional support, they can provide you with evidence-based information and all of that. And I thought, oh, that's great. I don't know if I can 100% depend on my husband with all of that. And I would love to have somebody else on my side, right? And to really give me all that, information and that support, really that emotional support that I needed so much. And so, started interviewing doulas, as people do. I remember meeting with 4 or 5 doulas, decided on one. I was very happy with her. And then hypnobirthing, when I mentioned that to my husband, well, he wasn't as surprised as I was, funnily enough. So he's like, you know what, it's it sounds great. It's, mind over matter. I know it's a lot to do with the mind and positive thinking. So why not? Let's try it, if that's going to help you. And I remember finding like a free taster session for hypnobirthing, and we enrolled to that. And we went there. I remember my husband, again, was more excited than I was. I was honestly like sitting cross-armed thinking like, how is this gonna help me? But anyway, we kind of pushed ourselves. We registered for the full course. And I'm so glad I did. And I'll tell you why in a bit. But I started to realize like all the things that I was learning was really about trying to focus on the positive. And I learned a lot of tools and techniques that I knew were going to help me during pregnancy, but also during labor and birth, hopefully. So I was getting really excited about that. And pregnancy, again, was going great. Like I said, I was working full time. But because I was so consumed into the research that I was doing, it wasn't now just specific to VBAC. I found myself in all these Facebook, like mom groups and pregnancy groups. And because I knew so much information at the time, I found myself like stalking people and like answering questions, from all the things that I knew. And, recommending things and suggesting things to people. And I thought, this is great. Like, I love doing this, And so, and I realized that is kind of what a doula does. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to kind of do this full time? Like if I could do this, just support other women, I just loved the whole idea, and I loved what I was doing with the little time that I had. And so then my research started to focus more on doula trainings. So I was trying to find some sort of online training that I could take that could, obviously help me become a certified doula. So I could do this officially, right? So at the time, yes, I found some, one of the, established online doula training programs. I enrolled to that. And so I was spending my pregnancy basically training myself as a doula, but also having a doula and preparing myself for the journey and for the birth. Fast forward, it's now, I'm almost about 40 weeks. Oh, before I forget to mention, I did manage to find a really, really supportive doctor who's not in Dubai anymore, unfortunately. But I remember when I did ask her, for her support for a VBAC too, she did say, well, yes, of course. She was probably the 5th or 6th doctor I've seen, because all the others told me once a cesarean, especially 2 cesareans, always a cesarean. So she was like, yes, of course. I've done it. I've had 2 vaginal births after 2 C-sections. Why not? Let's try.
Oh, wow. So she'd actually had that experience herself.
So that's exactly how I was sold, because I'm like, oh, if you've been through it.
That would give me a lot of confidence.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you have gone through this yourself. So yes, you're definitely my doctor. That's it. Case closed. Let's do this, right? Hospital was super supportive as well. It was great. And I thought I was prepared and I was happy. And I've done all my research, and I was doing everything from red raspberry leaf tea to just walking around a lot during that pregnancy, just everything, right? Until I made it to about 41 weeks, and I went to see my doctor. And she's like, okay, so you're 41 weeks now. What's the plan? Let's talk, So this doctor in particular didn't support inductions with VBACs. And that's totally understandable. I mean, there are doctors who would induce for VBACs and some who don't. With this particular doctor, she wasn't comfortable with the idea, and I respected that. And I thought, well, but she was willing to let me go past my due date, which was great. And she said, she was very relaxed about it. Let's just see what happens. So when I made it to 41 weeks, she didn't pressure me, to have a C-section, but she did say, well, it's time to think about our options now. So knowing that I had already researched a lot to this point, and also researched, what do we do once we're past our due date, I also started really researching on my conception date, because I remember writing it somewhere. So I actually knew my conception date, and what we know today is that if you know your conception date, it's actually more accurate than your ultrasound dates. So I was super excited, because when I calculated it, it kind of put me back 2 weeks.
So you gained an extra 2 weeks. So I
gained an extra 2 weeks. So I took that to my doctor and I said, well, by ultrasound, I'm 41 weeks. But really, by conception date, I'm 39 weeks. So she was like, how did you come up with that? And I actually had everything written down, and I was showing her, like, I was a super birth nerd at that point. And I was like, yes, I'm 39 weeks. And honestly, I don't feel ready. Like, I'm just not feeling it. I don't feel anything happening. I think I'm really 39 weeks and I still have some time. So she was a little unsure, obviously. It's really a matter of now trusting my word. It's my word against hers, right? But she's like, you know what? At the end of the day, it's your call. If that's what you want to do and you want to wait it out, I support you. That's your call, your decision. And if you're willing to take full responsibility for that, great. And let's see what happens. She said, all I can say is I know that women can birth at any point in pregnancy, even at 43 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll take that. Thank you. That's great. So now I'm 41 weeks / 39 weeks, really. And a week passes. And another week passes. So now I'm back at 41 weeks. But really, 43 weeks, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go by ultrasound. But it was at that point, at my 41 weeks, where my water broke. So I'm sitting there Friday morning. I started to trickle a little bit. Again, trickling, not a gush. But I started to feel contractions right away, right? And so obviously you have to remember I had 2 kids running around. It was Friday morning. That's our family day. I'm running around preparing breakfast and kind of feeding everybody and doing my normal, Friday thing. Not paying too much attention to my contractions, kind of just stopping in between, trying to breathe. They weren't super intense at that point, but they did start to, intensify throughout the day. It started off from 7 in the morning, and they just kept on increasing in intensity a little bit until, it was about 3 in the afternoon where they were starting to really get intense. So I remember kind of going to my room, trying to just breathe through them, listening to my hypnobirthing tracks, kind of sitting on the birth ball, trying to catch a nap, in between those surgeries, which is super hard, but really helpful. And yeah, just doing that. At that point, I told my husband, well, I think it's time you take the kids to your mom's. So my husband's parents are here. They're from Dubai. So I said, just take the kids to your parents. I can't deal with people, with kids right now. So that's what we did. And I continued to labor at home until it was about 9 p.m.
And did your doula come to your home?
So no, I don't know why, but at that point I thought, I don't want to disturb my doula and tell her that I'm just laboring, because I didn't feel I needed her so much at that time. And something in me told me that this is going to take a while, So I thought, I'll just call her when I felt I really needed her. And most likely that would be when I'll be heading to hospital. I believe I sent her a message telling her things were starting to happen. My poor doula, I kept her on call for an extra 2 weeks because of the change of due date. Exactly. I was like, guess what? I'm now 39 weeks again. So she was super lovely anyway. And she was like, great, I'm here. And so, yeah, my husband and I just kept on, laboring at home. It was chilled. It was relaxed. And by around 9 or almost close to 10 p.m., that's when I texted my doula, and I was like, okay, it's getting really intense. I think we're gonna head to hospital now. So she was like, great, I'll see you there. And contractions by then were coming, I would say, by every 4 to 5 minutes. And like I said, I felt they were pretty intense, and I really had to stop in between to breathe through them. And yeah, we drive to hospital, and when I got there, so obviously when you get to hospital, you do get checked, and you get put on the continuous monitoring just to see how baby's doing, and to see your contractions as well on the monitors. So when I was checked, I was told I was 3 centimeters. I didn't know how to feel about that. I mean, I was excited that at least I wasn't at a 1. But I also, with the intensity of the contractions, I thought I would be much further along. The feeling of the contractions, honestly, I would say that they weren't painful, but they were just intense. Like, I felt a lot of pressure down there. There was just a lot of pressure. Like, it felt that baby wanted to come out, and a lot of tightness. And actually, that's what I felt for the rest of my labor. And so my doula joined us at around, I think, 10:30 or so. And yeah, we kept on laboring. We were at Zarroug Hospital, and at the time they had just started water births. So that's when they had the pool there, and I was lucky enough to be able to labor in the pool.
Oh, I've seen it. It is so
beautiful, right? In their hypnobirthing room. Oh, so I was like, this is perfect. I just fell in love, honestly, with the room and with the lights, you know, and the glowing pool, and just I knew how water is really helpful for pain relief. And I thought, okay, great. I was planning on a very natural birth. So my preferences was to have no epidural. Obviously, I couldn't have induction. And I just wanted to focus on my breathing and all my hypnobirthing tools. And I thought, yeah, maybe I'll try gas and air or the Entonox if things get a little bit too intense. So we labored from around 10 all the way to, it was 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Then it was really morning. It was like 7, 8 in the morning. Basically, it took a while, a very long time. My doula was amazing, and my husband was super amazing as well. My doctor was with me throughout the labor, which is very rare.
Yeah, I've heard that. They usually just come in at the last minute, don't they?
Right, exactly. And again, that's an expectation that I always feel like I need to tell moms. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, who knows, but just not to expect that your doctor is going to be with you the whole time. And, for me, I didn't expect that she was going to be there for the majority of my labor, but she honestly just wanted to be there with me. She really was super supportive and really believed in me and really believed that I could do it. And so she wanted to be part of it and encouraged me through the process. So for me, I believe I had the best birth team. Everybody provided what they could in terms of support, which was great and which is exactly what I needed. And basically labor lasted for a good probably 15 to 16, maybe 17 hours. I can't recall, but it was very long. And I was checked at some point during labor again, and I was at a 7 centimeters. So I was then super, super excited, and I thought, wow, this is actually happening, right? So I was being encouraged by everybody that, yes, this is going to happen. There were no complications. Everything was going great. At some point, I was just starting to get really tired, and I think everybody in the room was too. And I was managing, again, just keeping very active throughout the whole labor. I didn't rest for a minute, except for when I was in the pool, obviously. But at the end, when I was really kind of going through transition, I think everybody saw that, where I was really breathing through those contractions, and they were coming like one after the other. No breaks in between. So I definitely knew something was really happening, and I felt a little bit of more pressure down there. And so my doctor asked if she could check me, and I was like, great, let's I feel I'm ready. So she checks me and she tells me that I'm at 10 centimeters. So by then, obviously, I am over the moon. I'm excited. I was like, I've made it to 10 centimeters. We're going to have this baby any minute now. All right. So after she checked me, I'm at 10 centimeters and I'm still laboring and I'm still feeling that pressure. And I'm just breathing through those contractions. I'm like, affirmations and listening to those tracks and really being encouraged by my team. But I realized, things aren't really progressing. Like, I'm not feeling this baby is gonna come out of me any minute now. And an hour passed, and then 2 hours passed, and I think almost 3 hours passed, and my doctor was starting to get a little bit concerned. She's like, well, why don't we do another check just to see what's going on with the baby's position? Maybe it's a position thing. So let's see. So she gives me another internal check and she's like, oh, okay. So yes, you're at 10 centimeters, but baby's just not in the best position. Baby's head is kind of tilted to a different, like his head is tilted sideways. So today I know it as asynclitism. Which means the baby's head circumference is at its widest. That's what's presenting, and so it's really tricky to get that head past the birth canal, right? At the same time, because I was at 10 centimeters for about 3 or almost 4 hours trying, with that pressure, that can start to swell you up, right? So that's what happened. So I had a cervical lip, so my insides are basically getting swelled up. So that with the asynclitism really kind of, reduced the size of that birth canal and, for the baby to basically be born. So at that point, I knew that could be a concern for me to actually have this baby vaginally. And I remember just kind of going out of my subconscious brain and being very conscious all of a sudden, kind of bringing up all this information that I had known. As I remember, I was training as a doula, so I did already by then know a lot about birth and what to expect and what to do in these circumstances. But then I also remembered a very important tool that I had learned from hypnobirthing about asking questions and what kind of questions to ask. And that really helped me kind of make that decision. So I remember between contractions kind of having, my doula, my husband, my doctor around me and saying, okay, so what do we do now? Like, what do you suggest? And my doctor said, well, we could try forceps, but she didn't seem like she was too keen on that. She's like, I wouldn't recommend that so much, especially with what's going on with your baby's position. Could be a little bit risky. So I said, look, I trust you. Right? I looked her in the eye and I said, I trust you. What do you think we need to do? And she said, if it was up to me, I would suggest a C-section. And she said that with a very heavy heart, like her eyes were almost tearing up, I remember. And I looked around the room and, there was a consensus. Like I saw that that's what everybody realized was the reality of the situation. But I remember kind of, again, going through those surges and then speaking up between my contractions, just saying, okay, so going back to forceps, what are the risks? What are the risks? Why not? What other options do I have other than forceps? Okay, then C-sections, what are the risks with that? What are the benefits? Obviously I've had 2 C-sections before, but I never really received that, information from the doctor during my labors for me to be able to make that.
And you were in a very different place as well.
Exactly.
You had learned so much.
Exactly. So I was really empowered to ask questions. I wasn't afraid. I honestly thought that, back then you couldn't ask your doctor any question. Like, why would you, right? They know it all. And it almost felt like you had no say. I always say my first 2 cesareans were done to me. And, I just had no say in it all. With my third, at that point where I really felt in control and I felt I was really part of that decision making. And I asked all the questions that I could ask. And I know I got all the answers that I needed for me to eventually be like, okay, I've decided, let's go for that C-section. And, you know, I said that with a big smile on my face because, well, it's been a total of about 30 hours in labor.
Yeah, you've really given it your best shot.
I have. I mean, I have done everything in the book and probably more. I really ticked off that checklist with the 10 things to do. I've done it all. I've tried my best. I was fully informed of everything to do with, you know, that decision that I have taken along with my team, but I was definitely the main decision maker in that experience. And I was wheeled in, and the best part about it all was I actually also managed to have a very relaxed, gentler C-section. And that's something I preach about all the time. You know, even if it's going to end up in a cesarean, you can still make it a beautiful experience. So I did ask for the doctor to tell me the process of like what she's doing step by step. That's just something that I wanted, and I know not everybody would want that, but I just felt more comfortable knowing what was going on. I just wanted a quiet room. I didn't want people to talk. I wanted music in the room, dimmed lighting. I wanted to see my baby being born. So these are all things that, you know, today we can actually ask for, you know, to just make it a better experience for us. And so that's what I did. And yeah, baby was born again at about a 3.6. They were all around 3.6 to 3.7. So he was a 3.67 baby. Again, healthy and happy. And it was a super great experience. Breastfeeding went well. Recovery was super easy, I would say.
And do you think that was partly down to the kind of the mental aspect of you had made that decision? So do you think that helped with your recovery because this was something that you had chosen? It wasn't done to you.
I definitely think it was. I definitely do. Because, I mean, if you look back at my previous experiences, it was in direct correlation to, you know, the experience versus how quickly I recovered. With my third, honestly, it was, I mean, a few days after surgery, I was in the mall with all the children. I had actually supported a mom's birth as a doula 3 weeks after surgery.
Amazing.
My first doula job with the same doctor. So that was funny. She's like, "You're not supposed to be here. What are you doing here?" And it was a VBAC experience as well. So that was quite emotional.
And the lady had
her VBAC.
Amazing.
Yes. But that just kind of really proved to me that, wow, like, it's definitely possible. I've just seen it with my own eyes.
How funny that was your first
I know, right?
job as a doula.
Yes, it was great. But that's also what makes me so passionate about VBACs today and how I love supporting VBAC women. Just with all my experiences and all the information. And, you know, I run the VBAC Moms of the UAE Facebook group as well. And it's so amazing to hear of all women's experiences because they share their birth stories there. It's so empowering and beautiful to just see whether, you know, they were successful in achieving those VBACs or not. But it's so important to, you know, support VBAC women a little bit more because, again, you know, you can be faced with all these doctors who will not give you that.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. People, and this is what I always thought before I became pregnant, if you have a C-section with your first, then you have to have a C-section with your second.
Yes.
I literally had no idea that it was even an option. I thought, well, that's just what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we have doctors that support VBACs today and VBAC2s, which is great. But I just wish that every doctor knew that, you know. And there's just a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. And that's why I say, you know, it's great to trust your doctor. You know, first of all, try to really, you know, prenatally ask your doctor all these questions to find out how supportive they are of your choices. But also to check with, you know, evidence-based information. There are a lot of amazing resources out there that really will tell you your chances of having a VBAC and whether you're a VBAC candidate, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just putting all of this information together, at the end of the day, it's your call, your decision of what you want to do. and how you want to approach that, your birth experience.
But you should know that you have options. And so you did your doula training during your third pregnancy, and then after you had your third baby, did you then leave your marketing role and go straight into being a doula full time?
So I actually quit my job during my pregnancy. I think I was around 5 months pregnant at the time, and just cold turkey quit my job because it was a calling, like I just couldn't imagine myself doing anything else, and it was literally calling me. And I just 100% focused on my doula training. I would drop off the kids to school in the morning, and I sat from 8 till pickup time just studying everything to train, to certify as a doula. And I managed to complete my certification just before birth. And after birth, by a few months, I really thought, wow, like hypnobirthing was such an amazing tool that really, really helped me with the decision making, but also how calm I was. My husband was pretty surprised at how calm and collected I was during labor. And just so many things that I felt hypnobirthing had really, really helped me during that experience. And I felt I would have a very different experience if I didn't do hypnobirthing. And I thought more women needed to know about this. Like, what can I do? And that's again when I thought, okay, I'm going to start teaching hypnobirthing. And I started again reading up and researching, trying to find a training. And there's, hypnobirthing training came down to Dubai. I've taken that, but it wasn't the same program that I taught, which is the Wise Hippo. And I really just wanted to teach that same program because that's what worked for me. And lucky enough, I contacted them and I told them, look, I'm certified now as a hypnobirthing teacher, but I really want to certify with your program. What can I do? And so, it was a matter of another month or two. Like I had to do some extra work to certify with them, but I finally managed to. And so I was really, really happy. By a few months after that, I certified with the YCPO to teach, and that's what I've been doing till today. And it's amazing to hear all these women's stories for how hypnobirthing really helped them with their experiences. So it's been really, really beautiful.
I'm doing a course in April, and I just can't wait, because what I love about hypnobirthing is, I think people initially think, what is this hippy dippy hypnobirthing? Is this just for natural births? Is this just for water births? But it sounds like to me that it's something that you can use in your everyday life. It's not just if you want to have a natural birth or water birth. It can help you. I mean, look at your third experience.
Exactly.
It can help you stay calm and be able to make informed decisions, be able to ask questions, even in the midst of being 10 centimeters dilated and having to make such a huge decision. And I think a lot of women maybe are a little bit skeptical about it and think, oh no, I don't think that's for me. But I can't wait to find out more about it, and just have those tools in my toolbox.
Right.
So that I can have them there.
Yes. And you said it. It's really about having, your toolbox that's full of all these tools. And I always tell women, it's not, it's not going to be the same tools for every woman in that toolbox. You take from it what you feel you want to take from it and what would help you, because every woman is different. For me, it was the focus on the breathing and that decision making. For other women, it might be the visualization aspect of it. Or listening to the tracks, or it could be anything, because you learn so much in the program. And it really is a matter of having just all these options and all these tools for you to use on the day. But also, yes, I'm very passionate about kind of spreading the word that hypnobirthing, first of all, is not just for hippies, but also it's very helpful for any kind of a birth, as it was for me with my cesarean, but also for induced births, for epidural births, for whatever kind of a birth. If you take from it what you feel can help you, then that's good enough. Hypnobirthing, sometimes, there's this misconception that you're all like, zen, and it's really about, just, not feeling any pain. And that's the first misconception I always heard about hypnobirthing, is like, I had women coming to me and saying, I don't want to feel pain. I want a painless birth. I want to do hypnobirthing. And I said, well, I'm sorry, you're probably in the wrong place. I mean, yes, the pain is very subjective. And in my personal experience, I honestly wouldn't, qualify my experience or what I had experienced as painful. It was very intense,
I keep hearing this. It's more of an intensity than a pain.
Right. I mean, I think
Which makes me feel a lot better, to be honest.
That's the thing. I mean, during the training, you start to learn about pain and what pain is associated with. I mean, today when I think of pain, it's really like, I had food poisoning a few months ago. Like, that was painful. It was like a stabbing in my belly.
Yeah, or like having a cut.
Or having a cut.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's such a different sensation that it really isn't painful, but it is just a lot of pressure. And I think it's so hard to describe unless you can actually experience it. But you will know it once you go through it.
But I definitely like this idea of pressure and intensity over pain, because I think that's the main thing that all women are scared about, is the pain.
Exactly.
Because we get told that it is the most painful thing you'll ever experience, and from what we see on TV and in movies, it's just pain. And to hear that, well, it's not just this excruciating pain, it's something that's very different, actually makes me feel a little bit calmer.
And that's the thing, honestly, it is about, mind over matter, because a lot of the times we do hear this from friends, family, when they share their experiences. The first time I told somebody, when I told some friends and family that I was pregnant, and they said, well, make sure the first thing you take is an epidural, because it's going to be super painful. So that doesn't help, because all these thoughts, they get stored in our subconscious. And you see the birth scenes, right, on TV, like on all the movies. The woman is screaming in agony. So why wouldn't we think birth is painful? And so when we grow up and having all these thoughts that are just kind of, stuck in our subconscious, obviously that's what we're going to expect. And so really, hypnobirthing is about replacing those thoughts with more positive thoughts about birth, and kind of, trying to tell your brain what birth can really feel like, which is more intense, more pressure, but not really painful. And obviously also thinking about how subjective pain is. What might be painful for you.
Exactly.
Might not
Everyone's
be for
pain
me.
threshold is so different.
Yeah.
And it was only when I got pregnant I started watching births, and I would only watch sort of positive birth videos, but every video I've watched where a lady has done hypnobirthing, regardless of what her birth ends up being like, just seems so much calmer, and she seems so much more in control, versus the births I've watched where women haven't done hypnobirthing and they're just kind of winging it, going with the flow. So that's what made me think, well, I have nothing to lose here, let me try, because there seems to be a theme here. And these are videos from all over the world, all different women, so it can't be a coincidence that they've all, from what I'm seeing, they're having a similar experience in terms of they're able to kind of control their breathing, and it's a calmer environment.
Definitely. I mean, from all the aspects and all the tools that you learn, you go into birth just, with less fear. And fear is a huge aspect of why women actually even experience pain. There's something called the FTP cycle, the fear, tension, pain cycle. It's an actual thing. So when we go into labor with a lot of fear, that will translate into pain. It's a lot of tension and then into a lot of pain. And so with hypnobirthing, you're really trying to remove that fear, and replace it with positivity, so that you don't go into labor with fear, which obviously then will remove the pain sensation.
Yeah.
But I mean, also just having said that, I do want women to understand that it doesn't mean that if you take a hypnobirthing course that you're just not going to feel anything.
That it's going to be pain-free.
That it's going to, it's very different from person to person. And what I always say is, if you don't put in the work, it won't happen. I always use the analogy of marathon runners. So if they don't do their training, they're not going to win that.
You can't
marathon.
just turn up on the day and expect
you just kind of exactly, and say, you know what, I'm going to win that marathon. It doesn't work that way. You have to put in the work, you have to put in the practice for it to work. It takes time to change all these thoughts in your subconscious. It takes time. So don't come to me and say like, oh, I've done hypnobirthing but nothing worked, but you haven't touched your book or done any of your practice or listened to your MP3s. It just doesn't work that way. But for all the women that do their practice and do their work, and I was one of them, definitely, it does definitely work.
Yeah.
I do think so.
So through everything you have learned and experienced so far, what are some pregnancy and birth myths that you want to debunk? Because since I've become pregnant, I've had quite a lot of people come at me with, quite frankly, just nonsense. Things I can't eat, things I can't do. And I'm like, what is that even based on? Like, I'm pretty sure that isn't true. Right. Let me do my own research, and then lo and behold, okay, there's maybe an element of truth. But what are some things that you'd like to debunk for us?
Oh, wow. There's a whole lot of them. Well, I would like to start off with, once a cesarean, always a cesarean. That's always a favorite.
Yeah.
I think it's super important that women realize that that's just not true. Obviously, it's different cases. There are very few cases where you might need to have another cesarean, but not when you're having a normal pregnancy and everything's fine and healthy. That definitely is a myth that I'd love to bust. So do find your supportive doctor for that. Another one is also episiotomies.
So this is something I don't know a lot about.
Right.
This word keeps coming up on groups and forums I'm in, but I don't know a lot about it.
Right. So again, this surprises me a lot, that a lot of women believe, and I think it's also very cultural depending on where they're coming from, that every first-time mom needs an episiotomy. So an episiotomy is a surgical cut that you would get during labor.
Okay.
Right, so as baby is crowning, so your doctor would do a surgical cut to your perineum, so down there, the birth canal, to make space for the baby's head to be born. In some countries, there's like a 99% rate of that happening, right? So it's basically every mother, especially every first-time mother, needs that surgical cut. And it baffles me because there's no evidence that supports that. It's very rare that a woman needs that, but for most women, there's no need for episiotomies, and it's actually evidence-based to let yourself tear naturally if you must, than to actually get a surgical cut, because when you get a surgical cut, how do you know if you needed that much cutting in the first place, right? With a natural tear, you tear as much as you need to. And the healing is so much better and quicker. And so that's just, again, one thing I find myself always kind of having to talk about with a lot of women, because they come in with the idea that, okay, so then after the episiotomy that I get after birth, how do I heal from that? And I say, wait a minute, why are we even talking episiotomies? There's a lot of evidence out there that really supports natural tears versus episiotomies. Yeah.
It's astonishing, isn't it? How, I'm still very early into this experience, but how people just take things sort of at face value and don't think to question or do their own research. It's like childbirth, pregnancy, we are just fed this information, whether it's subconsciously, and a lot of people don't think to go, well, hang on a minute, let me see if there might be more to this, or let me see what my options are. A lot of people, they just kind of go along with whatever's told to them. And I guess that's part of your work, is to spread that message that there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people that can support you. Like, this is your baby, your pregnancy. You do not have to be forced into doing anything you don't want to do. Even as simple as being induced. A lot of women don't realize that they can say, no, I don't want to be induced.
Oh yes,
it's wild, the things I'm learning. I'm just like, I want women to have that knowledge. Like, knowledge is power,
right?
But you don't know what you don't know. So if you're going into it kind of blind, it's not your fault. You don't know to ask these things, do you?
Right, of course, and that's the thing. I mean, it's really not a matter of, there's a misconception that doulas or childbirth educators are, only pro natural births and they're against cesareans or inductions. It's really not about that. It's just that we have all the information, we read up a lot, we have all the evidence-based information that does support some things more than others. And like you said, our role is really to provide women with the latest evidence-based information that's out there from trusted resources for them to make decisions. So we, would never make any decisions for women or push them towards something, because that just might not be the best decision for them. But I do believe that women need to have options. Because it's their right.
Yeah, to know their options.
To know your options. And unfortunately, that's not a practice that is very common here in Dubai. Also, not forgetting the fact that, all our, doctors here, even midwives, they come from all over the world. So there isn't a standardized kind of code of, conduct or practice here in the UAE that everybody follows, because some of these doctors are coming from places where, there's a 99% rate of episiotomy, right? And there are some that are coming from backgrounds that, practice more evidence-based practices. So when women go to see doctors, they hear conflicting information from all sorts of doctors and midwives. And so for us, it's really, we don't claim to be medical professionals, because we're not, but at least we are that centralized kind of place where you can receive, or that we're happy to give you all that information that is followed by all the international guidelines for you to make that decision. So yeah, it is unfortunate, and this is why I think education is super important, keeping yourself up to date and informed. Because now everybody is going to provide you that information.
And there's no excuse now, really, with the internet, YouTube. I mean, it's all out there. You don't have to spend money on this. If you can't, you can still have access to all of this information. And one of the things I'm going to do is put in the show notes a link to your podcast that you did with Barbara
Harper,
yes. On water births, because I listened to that recently and I was like, wow, I learned so much.
Right.
So I will link that in the show notes, because that for me was like a real eye-opener.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we do what we can to support women. Like you said, a lot of it is free. You don't necessarily have to enroll yourself in a course or program. And that's how, the podcast started, because I just really was genuinely passionate about spreading awareness about a lot of these topics that, like we discussed today. It's free, just literally, you just have to put that effort into listening to, podcasts that are coming out of the UAE, you know what I mean? Or reading books,
Yeah, and
online.
It can be anything. I think as long as it's, I don't want to come across in this series, just because I'm planning to do a water birth, that I think that is, a natural birth or a water birth is the best option. What I feel is that you have to make the best option based on you and what's best for your baby, and do that based on research and the facts and evidence and information. Like, that's what I want to encourage people to do, and listen to all different types of podcasts on birth and experiences.
And attend events. There are a lot of free events.
There's so many amazing free events here.
There are so many out there now. I mean, I really wish back in the days I've heard of these free events that you can actually go to and just listen to all sorts of birth and parenting professionals and, midwives, doctors, doulas, talk about all these topics. It's really just a matter of getting yourself there. And again, this is why, I make sure to host a lot of these free events as well. It's really just come on along. Let's just talk. It's free. Just come along.
Yeah, and something might resonate with you, and you might think, oh, actually, I want to try that. Maybe that's the kind of birth I want, or maybe I want to look into that more.
Exactly.
What are the three things that you would advise mums to invest in, whether that be a service or an item or an experience? What would they be?
So, of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased and say, get a doula. That's my number one. Honestly, it's the best form of support, emotional, physical. During labor, my doula was, on the ground with me, on the walls with me when I was trying to labor in all sorts of positions. doulas know a lot about birth positions as well as obviously the midwives. Hand in hand, you can have a great and amazing support team if you have yourself a doula. And I love the word invest that you've used, because I think sometimes as doulas, we do hear the fact that, oh, I can't afford a doula, right? And it's obviously understandable. You know, I that was something that I had, you know, in my experience, that was a concern for me as well. But I always, again, and I love using analogies, but I always say, how much did you spend on your wedding? Right?
Way too much.
Do you know what I mean? It's that one day, right? But it's a special day. You know,
yeah,
some people pay for, you know, wedding planners, and like, you want the best hotel, and you're paying thousands, right? Just to plan out that perfect one day. And I say, why not spend a little fraction of that amount on hiring a doula or investing in a childbirth education class, for example? Do you know what I mean? I think it's so important. And I think if you want it, you can have it. You'll find a way.
You know, I've never heard anyone use that analogy for a wedding, and it's so true.
Isn't it? It is. We don't overthink it. It's our wedding.
No, you just do it.
You
just
know you
throw
need to
money
spend
at
money.
it.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't think the same about birth, when in fact that could have, you know, a lot of after effect, you know, on everything, on even motherhood, on how you mother your children, if your birth didn't go according to your preferences because you weren't informed.
Yeah, or you felt like you didn't have the
support.
support.
Exactly.
Yeah. What sort of items, and especially for mums here that are living in apartments, and maybe some sort of space-saving items, anything that you would recommend?
I know I would not recommend getting a little bassinet and then a big crib. It's just something that I speak a lot with women, or I get asked a lot about, because I think a lot of women want to buy a little bassinet and then buy a bigger crib and then probably a bigger bed. And I just feel, you know, you either co-sleep, you know, just keep the baby with you on your bed if that's your choice, or, you know, you have these nice cots that attach to your bed as well if you want them close to you, or just invest in that one crib. You know what I mean? And those cribs like go up to like 3 or 4 years. They could be staying in that same crib, and some transform into a bed, like a toddler bed.
Yeah.
So I would just say be wise in your spending. So that's what I would say. But also I would say don't go and rush to buy things that you don't know you might need. And again, I see this a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good one, actually, because I think there's this need to get everything,
right?
Especially
that's
first time
nesting,
mums,
right?
Yeah,
as
you're
well.
like, I need everything. The amount of mums that have said to me, "Do you want my Excel spreadsheet from when they had a baby?" And I'm like, how many items are on this? I mean, I don't know if my budget's going to stretch to like more than like 5 top picks, you know.
I mean, the amount of items women realize that they don't really need after birth is crazy. So I just say, you know what, if you just have diapers for your baby, that's good enough. You know, like there's nothing that's going to be urgent. If there is anything that you feel you might need, you can literally just go, you know, pop down to the shop and get it, or better yet, just call for home delivery. I think most people deliver nowadays. Yeah. I mean, I experience this a lot as well with women who really want to breastfeed, for example. They will go on to buy a can of formula as well, or a few cans of formula, and keep them in their kitchen cabinets. And I say, well, why did you purchase them? I thought you wanted to breastfeed. Oh, just in case, you know, you never know. And I say, well, if you're so adamant about breastfeeding, you know, honestly, and if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you could literally call the pharmacy and have them deliver it to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because someone else said that to me recently. They said if you really want to breastfeed, don't have formula in your house.
Right. And that's
because it's so easy to give in. The pharmacies are 24 hours here. You can get it if you need it.
And exactly, it's really about that suggestion, and I talk a lot about that even in hypnobirthing, right? So it goes back to even your birth experience. I talk about epidurals. So there are women who completely refuse the idea of having epidurals and don't want it as part of their birth. So I say, you know, you can put it in your birth preferences or your birth plan. Please do not ask me if I want an epidural. Because it's that suggestion. Imagine having your midwife or doctor coming to you every 2 seconds saying, oh, you seem very uncomfortable. Do you want that epidural? I think 99% of women will give in to that, right? Versus that if you've never heard anyone mention the word epidural, you probably wouldn't think about it.
Oh, that's a good one.
Do you know? And that's what I had in my birth questions. I said, don't mention it. If I really wanted it, I'm sure I'll mention it, right?
That's really made me think, actually, because I keep saying, well, I'll let the doctor know that I might want one, so to have one on hand, but I know I don't want one. So why am I even having that as an option? If it gets to the point where it's so terrible, I can have one.
They will get it for you.
So why sort of like kind of tease myself knowing that it's on hand,
Yeah,
that's such a good one.
You know, in my birth experience, I can tell you I have never thought about the epidural throughout my 30-hour of labor. It never crossed my mind.
It's not on the menu.
And I remember after the birth, I remember telling my husband, well, wait, I didn't get the epidural, right? And he's like, I was like, what? You know, I didn't even think about it. I did get gas in the air when I was at 10 centimeters, and only because I was very curious to know what it felt like. Not that I really needed it, if I'm honest. But honestly, yes, epidurals.
Did it help, by the way, gas and air?
It did. I think it, for me. And again, it's very different from person to person. Some women just feel so out of control that they just don't enjoy it. Some feel a bit like uneasy, or nauseous. For me, it was great. Like, it was great. It kind of made me a little bit loopy, but I enjoyed it. I think it really helped me with the pain, because it doesn't completely take the pain away.
Yeah.
So gas and air will just kind of take the edge off things.
Yeah.
And that's what I just needed at that point, and it did help. So yes, I would definitely recommend it. And it's all natural, and it's always available.
Yeah, because I just have this thing in my head that I really don't want an epidural, because I want to be able to get up straight away. Also, if I am going to try for a water birth, I can't have an epidural.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've really made me think there that when it comes to the time of writing my birth plan, that's, that cannot be offered to me. Take the temptation away.
Right. It really helps. It really helps, because I will say, just go into birth with your preferences, and if you need it, just go for it. Ask. You can always ask for it.
Yeah, they can always give it to you if you get to that point. Okay, Shereen, we're going to do a quick fire round.
Okay.
What's your one piece of advice for first-time mamas?
Again, so many. But the one that really sticks to my mind is trust yourself. Trust your body. We do amazing things with our body. We grow human beings in our bodies. Not everybody can do that, right? I like to call us super women. We have superpowers. We make milk. Have you ever thought of that?
It's crazy. Like, I'm sat here talking to you now, and there's like a tiny human being in my tummy.
Exactly. That's just, when you really think about it,
it's
that's
insane.
Just crazy. It is. So,
and it's growing. And I'm just sat here. I'm not even doing anything.
You're not doing anything, So trust your body. If your body can do that, it can do anything. And just trust your instincts, as a pregnant woman, during birth, as a mother. Trust your instincts. They're huge. And then the other thing I would say is just educate yourself.
Yeah.
Education is key, honestly. It's not just a saying, but when implemented especially, enroll yourself in whatever course, classes, go to some free events, workshops, read some books, listen to podcasts, just really educate yourself. You owe it to yourself to do that. And then in the end, you might not get the birth that you want, but at least you'll come out of it feeling so empowered and knowing that you have done everything that you could to, achieve the birth that you did. And you should be grateful for that.
Absolutely. And there might be just one tiny little thing that in your birth sticks with you from everything and helps you make the right decision.
It's so true. Yes.
So
when I look back at the day that I found out I was pregnant with my third and I was crying, today when I think of that, I know exactly why I got pregnant with him. Do you know what I mean? If it weren't for that pregnancy, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today and doing what I do today and doing what I love. It has really been my inspiration. So everything happens for a reason.
That's so beautiful.
Do everything really happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's true. When I think about it, it really tears me up, because I'm like, wow, if I had just stopped at those, the birth of those two, that's it, case closed. I would have never looked back.
Yeah, you wouldn't have
And I'll
discovered
be
your
at my
true
9
calling.
to 5 job, do you know? But amazing things happen at the most strangest and weirdest of circumstances, right? And yeah, so everything's a blessing.
That's so beautiful. I love that. One thing you've learned about yourself since becoming a mum?
One thing I've learned about myself is that I can't be perfect. I can't be perfect mum, and I think as a perfectionist, I like to think that I am. I don't like the idea, but I do like to perfect as many things as I can in my life. But as a mom, I realized, oh, you can't perfect motherhood. I couldn't be 100% mom every day. I can be 50% mom today and 50% businesswoman.
Yeah.
And I could be 50% wife one day, and I could be 200% mother today. And I think my job allows me that freedom, and I'm lucky enough to be able to spend enough time with my kids when I can. But they understand that that's not all I am, you know, and that balance is still hard, and you can never get it right. But, you know, that's my life. That's my life, and I'm doing it for a good cause. You know, I'm happy that when I'm not with my kids, I'm with a mom, supporting her, or with a group of moms or parents to be. So yeah, you can't perfect everything. And it goes the same for new moms. I mean, I think a lot of new moms struggle with the idea that they have to be perfect.
Yeah.
They have to get it all right. And what is right? In whose eyes are we talking? Do you know?
Yeah,
like,
you're just setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the hardest part of motherhood. Just trusting your instincts and trusting that what you're doing is enough. You know, yes, you can ask for advice and recommendations, just don't overdo it. Trust your instincts.
Yeah.
You know, they tend to be right a lot of the times during birth, during early motherhood. And even for me right now, I trust my instincts a lot. You know, as a mother, it's definitely a key ingredient of motherhood.
In everything in life, your gut is usually right, I've found, and when I've tried to go against it, it never usually turns out that well.
Right.
What's one thing you wish someone had warned you about before you became a mum?
That I needed to be more prepared for what to expect. I wish someone told me that that's not how the system works the way I had it in my head. That it was just going to be this great supportive team and everybody's going to wish and want the best for me, and I was going to have a beautiful natural birth. I wish somebody told me, well, actually, this might happen. Maybe you want to see another doctor, or maybe you want to research a little bit, you know. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I am still thankful for my experiences because, like I said, it is what led me to be where I am today. And, you know, I don't regret the choices that I've made, but it would have helped.
Yeah.
It would have helped. And this is what I get so excited about today, when first-time parents are taking my hypnobirthing classes and having me as their doula. And I'm always thankful, like, oh my God, this is your first. I had to go through all of this with my third.
But I can use all of this to then help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They I think a lot of them don't realize how blessed they are to have all these options available to them today with their first pregnancies. And that's what I wish I had, you know, with my first, these options that weren't really available, or I just didn't know of them. And that's what I really wished I had known back then. And I'm so grateful that women have these options now, that, you know, that in itself can empower them for, you know, better births, or just more empowered births, even for their second and their thirds, and already having that probably very positive experience just with their first experience. So,
favorite thing about being a mum?
Favorite thing about being with my 3 crazy kids? That's a tough one. Favorite thing about being mom is knowing that I made those people. I made those human beings, you know, as crazy and wild as they may be. But when I really do think about it and I look at them, and you'll catch, like my husband catches me all the time, like looking at my daughter. And yes, a lot of times she answers me back. And it's not very easy to deal with an almost 12-year-old. But when I look at her, especially, I'm like, she's just almost my height. Like this whole human being with, like she's almost entering puberty. Like it's crazy to think of that. Like I made this with all the crazy experiences I've had with them, my birth experiences. I'm just so thankful to still be a mom, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that's a blessing on its own, because not everybody can be. But I was given that, I was given that blessing. And I've made those human beings, and I love my daughter. She knows exactly what I do. And one thing I'm grateful for is that when she has any friend who has a mom who's pregnant, or like she had a couple of pregnant teachers, she will go up to them and say, "My mom's a doula. She teaches hypnobirthing."
She's like your PR.
She is. I don't pay her. Like honestly, I don't. But she's like the little marketeer. She is so excited. She loves what I do.
I wonder who she gets that from.
Like it's so nice to be. I love that. I love that. Like the other day, she's just like, "Mom, can I have your business card?" So I'm like, "Okay, no, that's pushing it now." But she's like, "Really?
Amazing.
My teacher's pregnant. I want to give her your card." And I think that's just so beautiful that in however way she got to that level of trying to promote what I do, it's beautiful to see that I'm passing on a message, that, who knows if she's going to be a doula or not.
Well, one day you might be helping
I'll be her
with
doula.
Her own birth.
Do like she's just passing on the message, and she sees the value in me kind of creeping out like at 3 a.m. in the morning.
She understands what you're doing.
She understands what I do, and I love that. And I think that's definitely something I love about at least being a mother to my children.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, final question, Shereen. What does motherhood mean to you in 3 words?
Sacrifice, I would say 1, in a good way. I mean, we sacrifice a lot as mothers, right? Whether you're a working mom, your social life, your body sometimes, it can be many different things, but you are sacrificing something. And that's okay. I want a lot of women to just understand that it's a phase, but you always want to sacrifice your life as a mother. Like I'm ready to sacrifice my life for my kids, but it's part of motherhood. It definitely is, and it's okay. And then I would say it's empowerment for sure. During pregnancy, during birth, having a birth, a vaginal birth or a C-section birth or any kind of a birth, it's definitely just a whole level of empowerment being a mother. And thirdly, I would say, well, for me personally, I would say it was very healing. And especially with my 3rd experience. I mean, I don't know where I'd be today if I had just had my first 2 experiences. I would have hoped that I would have healed from those experiences somehow. But for me personally, I found my 3rd birth experience super healing for me, because it just, it answered a lot of questions for me. I, didn't get the birth that I wanted, but it was supported. It was beautiful. I know I've done everything I can, and I just needed that kind of closure. And it gave me that, and I thank my little one for that, and I think, birth can definitely be healing on so many levels. So for me, those would be my top 3 words.
Oh, amazing. Shereen, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for
I'm going to
me.
put all your links in the show notes, including for your podcast as well, because I'm really enjoying your podcast. It's amazing.
They've been on hold for a while.
I know, but there's still an amazing catalogue of episodes for people to listen to. Yes. And I know that you're going to be doing some more.
Yes, we've been launching again
But
soon,
that's what's great about podcasts. They don't go anywhere.
Right,
they don't date.
Exactly.
It's all still super relevant, everything that you're talking about in your podcast. So for women that are planning, or even for women that haven't thought about what kind of birth they're having, I would just really recommend listening to your podcast. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for having me.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me your time. I know you're super busy, so thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what you have in store in the coming months and for the rest of 2020?
Oh yes, lots of things coming. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of changes and things and courses and classes and events coming up. So I'm really, really excited for this year. So yeah.
And I can't wait to attend one of your workshops.
Yes, please do.
Thank you so much, Shereen.
Thank you so much, Peter. Take care.
Thank you once again to the gorgeous Shereen for sharing her personal experiences and knowledge so beautifully. You can find links to Shereen's social pages, website, and her amazing Belly Baby Mum podcast in the show notes below. If you'd like to find out who my guests will be on the next episode of Bumps and Babies, please do follow us on Instagram @LifeSchoolME, where you can keep up to date with all our news and find information on all our amazing guests. And finally, I would be so grateful if you could show some love and please rate, review, and subscribe to Life School ME the podcast to help us reach and hopefully inspire more listeners. Thank you for listening to Life School, conversations to inspire action.